beautiful faces.
Not the principal poem one?
I think you actually have it called
maybe.
something else.
Rest.
Yeah, principal poem, rest.
I went through a few different names, so.
It's all right. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. Beautiful faces, hard at work, busy at play. Beautiful faces, with love's intent they pray. There is happiness in ignorance, comfort in good times, reward for the cheerful giver. But when their eyes can't close at night, the darkness haunts them. Questions that spiral, a mind that is full of emptiness, laying, staring at the pale ceiling. Beautiful faces, when the morning comes, you are full again. Beautiful faces, do you know who holds your chain? Beautiful face, when you're staring at that blank ceiling, when darkness is haunting, remember the heart. You worry about what you can't change, so you do all you can with a beautiful face. But you know, hidden deep, you don't believe it.
You make a kind of a subtle transition the whole time, which I think is really well done. It goes from talking about the beautiful faces to talking to the beautiful faces. And like it, the more you get towards the end, like the last line, you don't believe it, is the most mysterious line. But I just, like the whole tone changes and it's like subtle and stark at the same time. I just think it's a really well written like transition in tone, but it's still kind of mysterious to me. So I think it's really well done.
Thank you. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to figure out what it is that this beautiful face isn't believing.
Yeah.
It sounds like a song to me. I feel like that would be a very beautifully written song. What I think of, and I could be wrong, with like the beautiful face being something that in somebody that is beautiful and I guess there's no other way to describe it but beautiful, but that is not seen very often by that person. Seen by others, but the person themselves can't believe it, is what I think of when I read this. But I agree with Haley, it's very, very well written, and I like the mysteriousness of it.
Yeah, it could mean that for sure. I kind of was inspired by the Analect 1436, where it talks about what I saw as like a rest, and that's kind of what I wanted to write about, was what is true rest, kind of. So when I thought about rest, I thought about the inner heart posture more than physical rest, obviously. And so the beautiful faces just kind of reminded me of like a type of person that is a very, I don't know, a good person at heart, truly. But they still lack a kind of rest in their person, you know, just in what they do isn't full because it's not centered in something that's, you know, full. It's kind of like a half thing. And what's interesting too is even those people are doing the best that they can, right? And I believe that those things in that way of life is not genuine, but yeah, I don't know. In the Analects it said, the gentleman by means of rightness makes his peace with fate, and therefore his heart is always calm. And I was just thinking about how a lot of the times it also isn't the way that we try to control, obviously, what life is for us and fate, you know, I guess. But I actually I didn't really like this poem, but Isaac helped me appreciate it a little more. So. At first, when I first wrote it.
Can you explain how it relates to 1436?
Yeah, it's kind of like the person that's not calm at the end of the day.
It's kind of like a contrast.
Yeah, a little bit. When they're, I guess, kind of left to their own thought, or when it really comes down to it, they're kind of not at rest within themselves because there's something missing. They're not calm with what they do. They're not at peace with where they're at. But still, yet they do all these things with a great face, you know. And they have love with them. But yeah, in a way it is kind of neglecting the self, in a way. Like not knowing what it means to submit yourself to the Lord. Kind of taking that into your own hands.
This is an interesting pairing with what we were just talking about earlier. But I saw a quote the other day from, maybe some of you have heard of him, maybe not. He was a French philosopher, Blaise Pascal. One of his better known works is his Pinces, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is French for thoughts. It was like a diary. He just wrote all sorts of different thoughts about all sorts of different things. And one of them was, he said, so many of the world's problems could be solved if men were just able to sit by themselves or be in a room alone and at peace. That was such an odd thing to say. But the way this was contrasting to what we were talking about earlier is that much of our process of self-cultivation, especially in the beginning, has to do with other people, learning a lot about ourselves through our interactions with other people, rather than going off and separating ourselves from everyone. But this is offering a bit of a balance to that, in that there are some people who almost seem to be afraid of themselves in a way, so that they can't remain comfortably and productively in those places in which they aren't surrounded by some kind of activity or group of people. I'm not just distinguishing, say, an extrovert from an introvert, where extroverts get all of their energy from being among others and can't really be alone for that long. I'm not necessarily talking about a personality thing. But that is part of what you seem to be describing with this poem, is, especially in the detailed description you offer of this sort of beautiful face person is it seems like a very social and active person. But when they are brought to any sort of place of stillness and reflection, it's a dark place for them. It's a difficult place for them. And I think there are plenty of people that are just like that. But again, I wanted to shift away a little bit from it being like merely a personality thing to it being what you are presenting it as, which is a disposition of spirit, a character in a person, like Confucius describes the gentleman to be. And so, is that getting closer to some of what you were thinking as far as who this beautiful face or who these beautiful faces are?
Yeah,
In contrast to what the gentleman is, who's able to find a place of peace and rest in the face of fate, in the face of how things play out in life.
I guess I was thinking a lot about almost those places of solitude is like times that we should be drawing near to the Lord, almost like an opportunity for a relationship there. And so when I talk about those times when they're alone, obviously their foundation hasn't been set in the Lord first. It was kind of in other people, in a way. And I think it's always better if it's the Lord that is preceding everything, right? If our relationship with the Lord is first, and then everything else, all those other good relationships, good things, will still be the same fullness to us, but not without that rest that we have within because of our settlement, and I guess our relationship with the Lord as well. But I even saw, as I was writing it, I felt almost like a fatherly perspective of him, like the Lord saying, beautiful faces, like he sees them as beautiful. And it's almost like a very sobering kind of watchfulness on these people of you do all these things and they're things that are very much like me, but again, you don't know me. When you come to that place of unrest, you don't come to me. So kind of some of that as well. Does that help a little bit with what you were saying?
Yes, I was actually trying to help bring out what you were saying.
Yeah, thank you.
No, so not that I was clarifying what you were saying, but yes, it does very much help.
Yeah, that's what I saw in the poem that was very meaningful to me, is that it's very personal in a way that feels like they're speaking to a deep part of you as someone who sees you. But it did remind me of the kitchen in the Father's house a little bit too, just because there are a lot of, what it mentioned is people that are very, very dutiful in there, that beautiful face. And a lot of it is a pure heart, even before the Lord, in what you do. But when that source is not there, when you're still not at peace and with that calmness and reassuredness of doing it with Him, that is what causes that inward divide. And so I almost see this is a person that is doing all these beautiful things, and they're doing it with the right heart and a beautiful face. But when they lay down at night, it all feels void. They're not happy with it. They're not content with it, because the reason and the source by which they do it, there's not a rest there yet. And so it's from a perspective of someone who sees that, and it's almost an encouragement towards that way. Yeah, you're doing all these right things, but I want to do it with you. I want you to be with me in it. And that's what was meaningful to me.
Yeah, what's taking place when you're when you are really able to engage in a reflective and this is kind of a funny word to use, but like a really spiritual, genuine time alone and before the Lord. What you're doing is delving, is the real word I'm thinking of. Your roots are delving deeper versus roots that remain when that isn't the case in a very shallow place. So your security is in the shallow and ever-changing things of life. So you can just imagine that the topsoil of any place is subject to change and alteration and whatever's taking place in that area. Say a rainfall or flooding or activity of different animals or humans, whatever it is, that it's always going to be changing. Being rooted in those things alone is what I'm seeing in your poem. It's like finding that comfort in good times, that rest, that comfort is in good times. It's in the activities. Maybe it's even in the people, whatever it is. But in delving deeper, we could say it is in your relationship with the Lord. It is in your engagement in the spiritual realm, however you want to put it. The roots of where you find your rest, your comfort, or your security now begin to reach into things that have nothing to do with the physical realm. And when that's the case, what can really disturb you? What can ever really disturb you? What can ever really bring unrest to your heart? Like, isn't that when we're facing some sort of difficulty or unpleasant season or circumstance in life, that's, at least I can say for myself, that usually the desire isn't just for, man, I really wish there was some resolve to this circumstance so I can go back to a more content and peaceful way that things were before. It's the greater cry of my heart is, I don't want to keep getting here. I don't want to continue to get to this place, regardless of what it is. I don't want to return to this state of mind, as I so often have, to reach this place of unrest. And the way to do that is obviously not going to try to engineer your life circumstances to avoid such instances. It's where and how you're delving in those quiet times that Benji's mentioning in his poem. And these are lives that, despite everything that is seen on the outside, and not that there's anything bad on the inside per se, but they have not been able to or unwilling to delve into harder to see but much more substantial places of security and true rest. Their hearts are being established upon and within something new that has nothing to do with daily experience. This is the really mystical, seemingly mystical, but I would say critical part of anyone's spiritual development is learning to delve in these places. this is the difficult part about it, and the seemingly mystical part about it is it has nothing to do with experiences and feelings that are always being are always surrounding us through our daily life. Even sometimes the lack of feeling and the void of experience, which we like to call boredom, is itself a kind of experience. It's beyond that. It's beyond experience or no experience. It's a completely different thing. I don't really know what word to give it. But that's the place that you're reaching for in those times. And it's not like you're mentally pushing yourself to be empty and void, like it's some weird sort of practice. What you're really doing is the thing that we're always encouraged to be doing and always desiring to do, which is come before the Lord. And that takes a kind of persistence, almost a seemingly foolish persistence, always asking and seeking and knocking. There is an answer promised to you in God's time when your heart is ready for it. So that's what it looks like in practice. Anyways, anyone else? I'm guessing we had like everybody read Elisa's, but then we switched it up on everybody, so surely you guys have something, so.
I remember one time, probably like 5 to 8 years ago, I don't know. It was a long time ago. I used to like go to bed and do that thing, look at the ceiling, and like think about my day. And at that time I was very immature in my way of thinking about life. Still in a lot of ways, but because this is something I talked to Mom about. And I would say every time I go to bed, like I'm sad about something. I don't know, like I can't explain why. I remember that I tried to, like I wanted to change that at some point in my life, and like I changed it to where when I went to bed, before I went to bed, I would think about my day in a different way, kind of with a different perspective, and to think about the love in my life, the blessings in my life, and that kind of changed my perspective from that, because I didn't want to. At that point, I didn't want to do that anymore. Like I didn't want to go to bed with a sour taste in my mouth. But I kind of correlate that to your poem a little bit. That's what it made me think of. And that perspective on life is definitely something important. And that's definitely something we're always balancing between what we want, and that will affect our life and what we want, because many times what we want we can't get. But that should really make us consider what it is that we truly want, and where that's based, and where our heart is. Because I think in that time when we were alone, even like that French guy said, someone could be, content and happy when they're alone. Because I feel like when we're alone, we start kind of going this way in ourselves and considering what we want, what we're thinking, what we're worried about, what we're happy about, sad about. But I think if we're always content and not content as in I'm so happy, I don't know, but like I kind of like where Dad was talking about, I am content with my placement in life because my placement in life is where God has set me. If that is where, and then wherever we are, and as long as we're seeking the Lord in that, I think there is a place for true peace and joy and a ability to go to bed and look at the ceiling and go to sleep because we're content with life and we're not yearning for something else. We're not stressing in our minds. But I'm being very basic with the way I'm explaining this, but that's kind of what it made me think of. So well done. It's well written.
Yeah, I like what Noah said too, with like, and you captured it as well, actually. Like, it doesn't have to. I'm not trying to imply that we need to have some special experience, when we're looking at that blank ceiling. But the fact that we can lay down and rest means that there's rest there, and we're not fighting against ourselves or even, I don't know, whatever it may be. But that kind of rest of life flows into everything, for sure. But yeah, it's just cool that that kind of rest can be the way that we live as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be something special or out of this world all the time.
Thank you, Benji.
Yeah. Thank you guys for your thoughts.
Why don't we try to do one other first?
Let's do Kayla.
Okay.
Should be 1435. Is everybody about there? In this world of darkness, where confusion has its play, I sit in silence, waiting. So aware of all around me, yet no others can see. Blinded by the appeasing fog that drifts softly over their eyes. In my soul, no one can see this burden I must bear. When will they recognize? When will they understand? Perhaps they'll never know. And maybe they won't ever see. But heaven has its purpose, and I know that it hears me.
Is this mainly going off of the analect point, or did you have some other meaning that you were inspired by from the analect point, or that you put in your poem?
It definitely is sort of based off of the Analect, but this was the one where Confucius says that nobody can understand him, but maybe heaven is like the only thing that could or would understand him. And it was just making me think, because I feel like there's often times that the Lord will give us, I guess, a piece of information or something he'll let us see into that maybe other people can't yet see, and it feels so much like a burden because you want somebody to understand what the Lord is showing you. I even think of it in like having siblings, where it's like, I mean, being the oldest, a lot of times I can tell Camden, hey, don't put that in your mouth because I know it could be dangerous for you, and he doesn't listen because he doesn't know for himself that it's dangerous. Like, I think of it in that way too. But just kind of being content that even though we may understand and know things that others may not yet understand, the only person who really needs to know is the Lord, and the only person you should be looking for understanding for is Him and His purpose and ways. But that's definitely a hard lesson to learn. I feel like I've had to learn that a couple times, and He still is teaching me in it. But it encouraged me to write this, even though it may be simple or small.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I felt like I was, I know what you mean with the sibling thing, but I felt obligated to point out, to like support my siblings and show them a better way of looking at things, but it wasn't right. It wasn't right to say that in the moment. So this is kind of, I can relate with this poem from what I've experienced in the past, but I feel like now I could even add more to it because it also, now there's been a shift in the way that I even perceive my siblings as well, because they probably see things that I do that they could point out things in me, but it's also the same situation. So it's kind of like this perception of a human towards other humans that they're familiar with. So I just think this is this feels like a very personal poem because it's not like, it shows a very human heart posture, which is, it's real, and it's a work in progress, you know? So I just thought that was cool that I could kind of see where it's coming from experience.
Yeah, that was definitely the way I was going for, because it's like, of course there are things that I'm sure people see about me and have seen about me that's I can't see, and it really is that like human mindset. It kind of like goes from an inward thought to then fixing your eyes upon the outer, I guess. Like, it is kind of a selfish, I guess, the selfish struggle until your eyes are lifted.
It's kind of like taking something that you've learned and then sort of projecting it on other people and things like that. But I think it's just all like familiarity that gets mixed in with something inside yourself. That's pretty much what you're saying. But
What I think you're talking about here, all the same though, Kayla, especially just hearing Confucius's voice in this, because it very much follows along the sentiment he was expressing, is that it's not as much a matter of like people not knowing your thoughts about them or about yourself or whatever. So it's not at all scenario based or circumstance based. This is something that has to do with like the meaning of your own life, so your own destiny. And what I remember a little bit from what we had discussed in class was like Confucius found so few that he could relate to on that level. Like there were so few that he felt really understood what his life was actually for. So there was very little opportunity for fellowship there. So that was kind of where he was coming from when he said, nobody really seems to understand me. It's not like he was saying, like he was trying to explain some concept to a disciple and they were having trouble understanding it. It wasn't that kind of thing. Or he was trying to correct this person, but they didn't really seem to care or comprehend what he was, the nature of his correction. It wasn't that sort of thing. It was what he was bearing, like you say. What I would ask you is that third line where you say, I sit in silence waiting. And perhaps it's both, but I would be interested to know if it's more one than the other. Are you waiting for you to eventually be understood by others, or are you waiting for others to eventually understand you, or are you waiting for the playing out of, or the fulfillment of heaven's purpose?
I think it was more the fulfillment of heaven's purpose.
Yeah.
Like, I can't remember exactly. It took me a little. I kind of struggled with this poem a little bit when I was writing it. But yeah, I think it was more so the waiting for what was planned to happen, because in this case, I felt like Confucius was very aware of what was to happen, or he at least had an idea of it, and nobody else could understand that yet, or wasn't at that point yet. And he was kind of just waiting, and it was a burden until he was like, maybe it's just like the greater purpose, the heavens will understand me, and that's okay that other people don't. And that was really like, I don't know, I just wish I could explain better. I'm not very good at explaining things, but I think that was really
I think you're doing fine.
my heart in this poem. Because I think we all can feel that at some point, or have a little bit of understanding. Maybe, probably not as great as maybe Confucius did, but just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it kind of also is an extension of rest for sure.
I was
Yeah.
just thinking in terms of
Yeah.
some things we talked about with your poem,
Mm-hmm.
because I would imagine, I just enjoy how like real a person Confucius was described to be, even though we don't actually know that much about him. Because there are plenty of cases in the Analects where he's like he expresses a little bit of emotion and attitude towards things. So our typical idea of a sage character is that they have very controlled expression, if they give any expression at all. Not that they're robots per se, but that they're just like these very holy men that don't have really any of the trivial things of humanity in them. But a lot of that was still shown in Confucius's character, and I think this is 1435 was kind of one of those instances where he's, at least somebody heard him say, "Man, nobody understands me." So, like it was almost a bit of a complaint. I don't think it was entirely a complaint. There was obviously, as we're seeing, something more enlightened than it just being a bad attitude. It wasn't a bad attitude. Let's think of it that way. But it was. It almost did seem, at least a little bit, to kind of be in spite of himself. Just because there are a few other places where he says something similar, like where I have in mind one other place where he says, basically he says, "I wish I didn't have to use words." Because he says, what does heaven ever say? He says that twice. What does heaven ever say? And that's also kind of an expressing a bit of a discouragement or disappointment. But in the way he ends that, in the way you, in the same sentiment in your poem, when you're saying, "Heaven has its purpose, and I know that it hears me," just what we were talking about with Benji's poem, I think he was still nonetheless a person whose confidence was rooted in something that had nothing to do with the topsoil of circumstance and the physical realm, the excitements and irritations of feeling And that's the senses, those sorts, and emotion, those sorts of things. Because yet again, we could look at another place where Confucius mentions when his life was being threatened that he knew what his life was for, and he knew that nothing would disturb that. Nothing could overcome that or undermine it. And so he was able to say, what can this fellow that's threatening my life ever do to me in that case? So that was a pretty scary external circumstance, but it didn't affect him. In fact, in terms of even talking about his attitude, he seemed to really keep his cool there, in spite of even probably his disciples nearby probably going crazy. But it's interesting to me. It's learning to grow in and even examine yourself and other people, the roots of character. That's an interesting phrase to me, the roots of character.
I really like that part about that where it showed kind of his human struggle, even though what he was fearing was something great, and most of the time he seemed like he had it all together without any doubts or concerns. That's what I appreciated about it too, because he kind of just shared like, this is my struggle, but he resolved it, or he came to a peace or resolve with it.
Yep.
Yeah, I also noticed how your poem definitely highlights the simplicity of just the shit. You know, like it's only 2 lines, or well, 4 maybe, but you know, that quick of a realization, you know, that it's like, oh, I'm just, you know, dealing with myself here. It's basically just me that I'm complaining all these things about, but then you realize, no, it's actually doesn't matter. It's for something greater. That quick of a heart posture shift, and there you go.
We've been doing this for a long time. I wish I could get more of you guys to say things. What would be helpful for that? Super.
Prizes.
Yeah. Little piece of candy if you say something. Yes. No. This is not.
No, I think I can relate to your poem myself, and kind of thinking about the way I like to express myself. I find that when I really try to, it doesn't really work. When I use my words and like really want someone to understand something about me, it's hard for me to do it when I'm trying to talk to them just face to face. And granted, there are some times where I can get across what I want to, but I've found that, especially when it's something when it comes to my life and the Lord and how I seek Him, I find it very hard to use words for that. Because I don't know, you get so easily, anyways, that's not important, but I've found that a lot of the times you represent God, your life and the Lord by, it's really just the way you live and the way that you are genuinely. And if you're not genuine about your life on the Lord, then it's not going to show. And it just can't be explained because it's not real in life. But I've found that the real parts of the Lord in my life are explained through the way I live it out and through God's justification. I'm not justifying myself. It's God. And it's kind of like the way that He says justice or vengeance is mine. God will vindicate us. And because at that point it's not us trying to prove a point. It's God within us being expressed through a genuine expression of life. And that's what I kind of see in your, that heaven sees you, that God sees you, and that He will represent you and vindicate you in His own time. And maybe that won't come through such a worldly perspective of awesomeness to other people, in the way you might imagine other people seeing you being like, whoa, like whatever, like what you think that is. But yeah, it's just my perspective. But it's a nice perspective. Going back to that a lot. But yeah, that's what I saw in your poem there, and it's something that kind of formulated that kind of thought in my mind too. So it's well written. Get candy now? It's Jim.
I like the imagery of the fog that drifts slowly over their eyes. It makes me think of, because it's drifting, like sometimes they can see certain things and then sometimes they can see other things, but like it's never a full picture.
Well, thank you. You did very well. I thought of a new assignment, which I only just now thought of in light of the way class has been going with poetry reading. I understand that maybe there are environmental factors to hesitations to offer thoughts on poetry, so in that case, I'll help you with that a little bit. Those of you who have just hesitated to or didn't have anything to share, and the poems read today, your assignment is to send a text to the person or the two people that read their poems today, just offering some thoughts. So maybe you wrote down some but didn't share them today, however it worked out. So in that case, you'll just be sending that text to Benji and Kayla, and we'll continue to do that unless you are willing to share some stuff during the class time. So that's it.
Will Elisa be the next person to go, or should I pick somebody else?
That I think, yeah, maybe we'll try to do Elisa, since I would imagine she'll be with us next week. Do we have something going on next week? Okay, so next time we're together at least.